Methodist Church. And we've put together this panel just to kind of help ease anxieties, get some questions answered, troubleshoot through some things that may come up, and just make sure that we start the school year off on the best foot possible, knowing it's going to look different, you know, from what it did last year, or maybe even just look different week to week and even day to day. So getting us prepared there. We have some really wonderful panelists that have joined us today. We're going to give each of them about 5 minutes at the beginning just to introduce themselves and share a few tips, things that they feel that are important for families to know. And then we're going to open it up to questions. For the questions, I ask that you just send a message to me here so that we can sort through those and make sure we get them. That way also I have them all in writing, so if we're unable to get through all the questions, we can still get those answered for you. So I'm, again, so happy, thankful that you're all here with us today, and we're going to start first. I'm going to ask Kristen Parker to be our first panelist here to speak. Thanks, Kristen.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to introduce myself first. My name is Kristen Parker, and I am a homeschooling parent to Roman, who is now 15, and Jameson, who is 12. And for perspective, if you had asked me 15 years ago if I ever would have considered homeschooling, I would have blatantly laughed in your face, because I sort of assumed homeschooling was those ladies in prairie skirts and people who didn't care about education. And it just seemed like such a weird path. It was never something I would have considered. But we went to it because we had a kid who just didn't fit into the school system. He was quirky and weird, and we had him into an accelerated gifted classroom, and it was absolute chaos and terror. And he was a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. And I kept asking the school to accommodate him in ways that they frankly just weren't able to do. And that was just a mismatch between our child and the system itself. And it wasn't until I went to our pediatrician when kind of halfway through the school year, we just happened to be there for like our annual checkup. And this pediatrician looked at me and said, "This is a toxic environment for him. You need to get him out." So a lot of the behaviors that we were seeing were kind of caused by the environment. So out of just sheer panic, we pulled him out and started homeschooling him, assuming that we would go back to the school to a different district or to a different classroom the next year. And what we found is that over that semester of desperation homeschooling, it turned into a lifestyle for our family that we just couldn't replace in any way. It really put the ownership and the freedom on us to make the decisions for things. And that has really blossomed into something that's been absolutely spectacular. So I'm here just to kind of help as people are looking at either homeschooling, if you want, resources for that, or if you just are having trouble navigating what virtual or online schooling looks like. Those two things are different. But if there's, any of that kind of from a parenting perspective, or even from an educational coaching perspective that I can help with, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you, Kristen. And I'm just kind of going across my screen. So the next person, I'm just going to ask Megan Hamilton to introduce herself and speak a little. Thanks, Megan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Hamilton. I do happen to be Kristen's sister, and she invited me. So hi to everyone in Arizona. I'm coming to you from Rochelle, Illinois, which is about 90 minutes west of Chicago, furthest I've ever lived. We are out in the country. And I happen to be a licensed clinical social worker who is currently a school social worker. I've been a social worker for over 15 years. I recently transitioned into schools. This will be my third year in schools. And it's last year was pretty unique since we ended early in March. And the year before that, we had 17 snow days in the county rural district that I was working in. So I know in Arizona, you guys probably can't even conceive of 17 snow days. And oof, it really throws everybody for a loop when you have that many. So prior to being a school social worker, I was a mental health social worker, worked with adults with very severe mental illness. I also was a medical social worker and worked in hospitals. And I spent 8 years doing hospice social work, primarily focusing again on grief and trauma and assisting patients and families at end of life. So I made the switch from hospice into school social work, which is quite a transition. But with the mental health background and really the grief and trauma background that I had, it really is unfortunately an easy transition in schools and what kids are dealing with and facing right now. So that's my work history. Like I said, I'm a licensed clinical social worker here in Illinois. I have a master's degree in social work. And in addition to that, I am married to my husband, Rob, who is an ordained elder in the United Methodist Church, and that is why we are in Rochelle. It is his fourth full-time appointment. We've moved quite a bit in our 15 years together. But we have now been in Rochelle for 5 years, the longest we've ever been at a church. So we're very excited. Rob and I have two girls, Lily, who is 11 and will be starting 6th grade or middle school here in our town. And our youngest daughter, Ella, is 7 and will be starting 2nd grade. So both my girls here in Illinois, we transitioned to online or virtual or distance learning. Everyone's calling it different things these days. And about March 15th, I think March 13th was the last day of school here. And my kids, as well as the districts, transitioned to packets and then online learning programs. So I'm coming to you today both as a professional and as a parent. Granted, I realize in a different state with different rules in the districts you're working with, but we're all kind of in a similar situation there. The two biggest things that I just want to share as a professional, or what I do share with parents and what I would hope to share with you is really we need to be helping kids manage their anxiety, as well as kind of the collective grief and trauma that we're all experiencing as we live through this pandemic. It's not over yet. Hopefully it will be over soon, but we're living through something, as we know, is unprecedented and traumatic, and can be really scary. So as parents or grandparents or teachers or important people in children's lives, helping kids to navigate that can be difficult. And kind of the best way to do that really is to deal with our own anxieties and our own insecurities first and foremost, and to try to be that non-anxious presence for our child. That isn't to say that children can never see us upset or anxious or having those real emotions. Of course not. That's inauthentic. But we want to, as parents, of course, protect our children, and shield them from unpleasant situations. But at the same time, we need to be real with them, but we don't want to be overboard with our emotions. So again, as parents, the best thing we can do is to be that non-anxious self, that non-anxious presence, to allow kids to have their feelings and anxieties, but not reflect that back to them when they come to us. I think that's really, really key. And then just, again, to allow kids time to process that grief that they're experiencing. I mean, we've all missed big events, had to reschedule. Kristen and I have a cousin who's getting married who had to reschedule till next year. I mean, we all know of situations and families where, those big events have been postponed that we were all looking forward to, graduations. We just celebrated graduation here in Rochelle in a very socially distanced way for our high school kids. So, everything has looked different. And I think a lot of times for adults, but also for kids have a really hard time expressing that grief and that missing and that longing. And a lot of times it can manifest as anger, frustration, acting out, explosive behaviors, those kinds of things. When, again, really, I think a lot of times they're they're sad. You know, they're out of their routines, they're missing their friends, they're missing, you know, whatever sports they've been playing, and they just have a difficult time expressing it. So as a parent, to be that non-anxious self and presence and to allow a child to share what's on their hearts and minds can just be so empowering to a kid. So I really encourage parents to be present and to actively listen. And then as people of faith, you know, we can always take those worries and concerns in prayer to God, you know, as children, as a family, or to, you know, help kids to express as best they can and to get that support and love from, you know, our Heavenly Father as well. So thanks. Those are the most important things I would love, you know, I'd like to share, and I'm available for questions. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Megan. And next we have Diana Bodie, who teaches in the Scottsdale School District.
Hi. So I'm Diana Bodie, and teaching is my second career. So this will be my 17th year teaching upper elementary. So I teach 5th grade now. And what I can tell you is that learning with what we're calling enhanced distance learning is going to look very different than spring did, because spring was what we would consider crisis schooling. We went from literally, I'm in school on Friday, to Monday, I won't be returning. And that was highly stressful for students, for teachers. We didn't have time to really transition in a really strong way to distance learning. And that's not to say I don't feel that my team and my school did a good job, but it just looks very different than it will now. Families weren't prepared, teachers weren't prepared. It was crisis schooling. Now I think most districts have a much more formal plan. And I recognize that can be very stressful if you have 2 working parents and you're trying to juggle that. And I would say to you in that case, reach out to your teacher when you know who the teacher is, if you don't at this point, because most of what we're doing is what we call synchronous, meaning live teaching. Some is asynchronous, which means I'm still going to be online, available to the students live, but they're doing some independent working. So in our school district, it is going to be a full school day. It is not like the spring where you maybe logged on for an hour with your teacher and you had a lot of independent work. It is going to, as closely as possible, mirror an in-person day. So what I did was I prepared a top 10 list of what I would want parents to know about enhanced distance learning. Now, keep in mind it applies to my 5th grade class, so you may have to adapt a little, but Kristen, I don't know if I have right to share my screen. Let me see if I do. Nope. Would you mind allowing me that right?
I have it there, so you should be able to share now.
Okay, hang on one sec.
Sure.
Make sure I have the right thing up before don't you love when you get signed out? That's not nice. Be right there. Okay. Okay, ready to share.
Perfect.
Okay, so. So, top 10 things for families to remember about EDL. Daily attendance is expected. The schedule has been carefully planned to maximize learning. Number 2, be sure you have your child's supplies ready to go. Students are expected to be prepared to learn at 8:45, dressed in school-appropriate attire, breakfast eaten with all materials available and ready to use, just as if they were in person. Create an appropriate, quiet workspace that is most conducive to learning with no distractions. Now, I say that to you because in the spring, I had many students who would show up and have just rolled out of bed and still be in their pajamas and perhaps eating their breakfast and not really focused on learning. Number 3, create an appropriate, quiet, oh, I said that one, sorry. Number 4, it is important for students and parents to regularly review returned assignments and teacher feedback. Number 5, what I already told you, our school day will mirror a typical school day as much as possible. There will be synchronous, live teaching, and independent work throughout the day. Number 6, keep other devices off during class time. Not okay to be texting your buddies during class time. Number 7, please try to keep pets in another room during class time. It can be distracting when you have a team or a classmate who's petting their cat and scratching on their dog. It's hard to focus. Number 7 or 8, your positive attitude will help your child have a positive attitude. We want to be unified in our messaging of the importance of EDL. And that kind of goes to what Megan said in terms of anxiety, but the positive attitude follows too. Your child is watching you to see what you think about this. If it's important, then they feel it from you. Number 9, learning is important, and we are looking for a seamless transition from enhanced distance learning to in-person. When we return to campus, the learning progression will continue. In other words, we're not going to reteach the standards we did for the first 4 weeks. It's not like that's fun and games and, oh, they'll cover that another time. And in my case, 5th grade is a year to master independence and have high expectations for your child doing their own work. Now, I know that many of you have younger children and that may not be the case. And so you have to age appropriately, support them, or have them spend time with their teachers. As I said, ours is a combination. So for instance, in math, I expect to introduce a topic and review the previous day's work for 15 minutes, and then have the students go work independently for 15 minutes. Then come back, we'll talk about the independent work, we'll progress through the lesson, and then they'll go off and spend another 15 minutes finishing the assignment. Now, I will tell you it's a little bit different because we're not expecting a lot of homework beyond that day, right? Perhaps some independent reading, because it's always good to read. But I think in large part, as I said, it looks very different because you probably had work that was pushed out to you through Google or whatever method, and you had the teacher online for an hour, and then the rest of the time was yours to do with as you want, and that's not going to be the case. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an introduction. I'm happy to speak or answer questions that you have, and I can speak about how it will look different when we return to campus. The issue is we don't know when we'll return to campus. We hope when it's safe for everyone, but yeah, that's it.
Well, thanks. Thank you, Diana. We'll get to questions. We have a few more experts here just to weigh in, and then we'll open it up for questions. So the next is Dr. Christy Samadar.
Hi, I'm Christy Samadar. I'm a pediatrician. I have been a pediatrician for about 19 years now. I trained in Michigan and then moved to Arizona for warmer weather, where I worked first at St. Joseph's Hospital, taking care of inpatients, outpatients, and newborn babies. And then now I have been at Phoenix Children's Hospital for about 9 years. And I work mostly with outpatient from 0 newborn all the way to 21-year-old young adults. So we specialize mostly in children with medical complexity, kids that have multiple medical problems and see specialists, but then also children who live in the immediate area. My focus throughout my career first has been a lot on keeping people healthy with preventative care, and then more recently I've segued into helping kids who have dealt with adversity and mental health issues and training medical students and pediatricians to be better at addressing those things well. So that's a little bit about my career. My family, I have 3 kids of my own. I have someone who will be a freshman in high school coming up this year, and a 7th grader and a 3rd grader. So I'm kind of spanning all the different elementary to high school and trying to navigate all that this year for the first time. In terms of advice for you, I wish I had more concrete things. I think as the coronavirus goes across the months, we learn more and more about it, but unfortunately we still don't know everything about it. So it's hard to give advice that will be long lasting and not change as we learn more. Some of the things I think most of you have probably read, but just to review very briefly from the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Center for Disease Control, it is advised for children to wear masks when in public. Over the age of 2, under the age of 2, it's a choking hazard. The caveat to that is with little kids, it's hard to know if wearing a mask will actually make them touch their face more. And so you have to role model that and teach them how to do that. There are lots of things you can do to adjust the straps. There's different things they sell out there to make it more comfortable and well-fitting, but that will likely be a part of when we return in person. Also, role modeling and implementing into your daily routines at home. Good hand hygiene is very important before eating, things that are pretty common sense. In terms of the distancing, there is a little discrepancy between the 3 feet versus 6 feet, and I don't think anyone knows for sure the best distance, but trying to maintain some distance. There is the thought that younger kids are a little less likely to transmit the virus compared to older kids, so there is felt that it might be a little bit safer for younger kids in terms of their infectivity rates and things like that. But I think as time goes on and as people return to school, we'll see more information about that and maybe need to have some flexibility to adjust as things progress. But the other things that I think as a pediatrician that have been voiced by many people here, but from my perspective, keeping routines helps minimize anxiety. So what Diana was saying about like making sure people get dressed and brush their teeth and have breakfast, a lot of us have just kind of gone to summer free-for-all schedule for a really long time now, and it's going to take some effort to get back into our routines, but it does generally help decrease anxiety and will help them perform better when they know what to expect. And the other thing that is really important to still, while you can't do your sports, but to still be active, to find ways as a family in Arizona, it's particularly hard this time of the year, but to do things to stay physically in shape, because that will help both your physical fitness, but your mental well-being as well. And then kids need to feel a sense of purpose and that they're contributing to something. I think that has been lost for some as we've gone through this pandemic. So being creative about that, one of the recommendations, and I think it's a little later into the pandemic now, but creating a time capsule and having them jot down things from this time to contribute to future learning about what kids were going through is something that you can think about doing. Journaling. There's a good app that I share with some of my patients called 3 Good Things, and it just reminds you to think of 3 good things that happened to you that day, so that you can kind of change your perspective and look for the good things in your day. And it's really simple. It just pops up as an alert. And I often will have everyone go around and share one of their good things at the dinner table. But if there are any other questions when we get to question and answer, I'm happy to address them.
Thank you, Christy. And last but not least, we have Luke Pepper.
Hi, everyone. I'm Luke Pepper. I'm an ordained deacon here in Northern Illinois. I'm also the co-chair of our Order of Deacons up here. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago and have found myself back there now. I have a master's in divinity with a focus on Christian ed, as well as a master's in teaching special education. And so my primary appointment right now as a deacon is to serve as a special education teacher. I work with 6th graders in the suburbs in Carroll Stream. And I mostly co-teach in inclusion classrooms with language arts and social studies classes, as well as some smaller interventions. I think one of the biggest things that I wanted to kind of emphasize is that whether you're doing virtual learning, you're doing homeschooling, or even once students are back in the school, is that it's really important to develop a routine, to develop a schedule. And I think an important piece of that is it's important to know that a child's attention span is limited. I think you all know this pretty well, right? But you shouldn't get too worried and too stressed out about them learning everything all at once, especially when they're at home. So a good rule kind of in normal times, and we're not in normal times, right? But a good rule is that you take the child's age and you multiply it by 2. So that's how many minutes you can expect a child to pay attention to a particular task. So if you've got a 6-year-old, that means you can expect them maybe 12 minutes max to be able to stay focused before their mind starts wandering. What I would say about that too is that, like, even before this pandemic hit, our society as a whole was starting to lose its attention span, even adults, right? So it may be that if you've got a 7-year-old, 7 minutes may be all that they can handle before their mind starts going in different places. And so rather than just kind of allowing that to be in a state of chaos, I would recommend you plan for it. So if you know that your child after 8 minutes is gonna be looking for other things to do, then plan for it. 8 minutes on, maybe a couple of minutes they have a brain break. 8 minutes back on, and just do that type of routine. So depending on like what your district does, the teacher may be able to help provide that structure. Like Diana was mentioning, it sounds like there's kind of that built in already, but when they're doing independent work, or if you do end up having to help them with homework as well, I think just plan in advance that they need that type of schedule and that type of predictability. And what I've done for a lot of my students with disabilities is I really found they struggled with that schedule, and so I actually provided a visual schedule for them. So I'm sure you could look online and find something that somebody's already created, but you kind of know what your schedule needs to be if you're staying at home and you're also trying to work and you're trying to help them with their learning. But something visual, even that they can check off to make sure that they've completed assignments, that they're on task, and with that built-in free time, imagination time, games, going outside, all of that kind of helps create this sense of safety and the sense of that we can get through this.
All right. Well, thank you, Luke. So I've had one, yeah. Go ahead, Judy. Do you have a question you want to ask the panel?
There we go. I'm unmuted.
There you go.
I have more of kind of a statement. I'm a grandmother. Obviously, I'm older than any of the rest of you on here. I'm also a nurse practitioner, and I spent my last, well, I'll say I spent my first 20 years in high-risk obstetrics, working with families whose babies were at risk, whose pregnancies were at risk, and who oftentimes had unexpected outcomes, or at least not outcomes that we desired. And I spent my last 20 years in pediatric well care. I'm also a grandmother of twins who live about 2 blocks from me. And so when the COVID hit and we closed down and the school closed down pretty much except for online things that they could get onto, I have 2 8th graders now who have passed the 7th grade, but a mom and a dad who work from home full time during the daytime hours. And I think what you've not addressed in the panel is what happens in a family when you don't even have the grandparents available, but when you've got 2 parents who are both online. My daughter is a nurse hotline for Banner Health. It isn't something that you can interrupt in the middle of what you're doing. She does it from 7 until 3:30, 5 days a week. Her husband is a banker who is in the midst of doing mortgage contracts for commercial things. It isn't something, again, that he can interrupt in the middle. And then she's got twins, both now nearly 13 years old, who will be doing the same things in the same classroom online. How do you manage all of that with a structure? And they're in the Scottsdale Unified School District, by the way, Diana. How do you manage a structure that is so structured, so rigid, that it does not allow for anything for the kids to get off, to go to the bathroom, to go out and ride a bicycle, to come back on when the parents are able to help do that? It really doesn't. It was difficult enough when it was free this past semester, when it closed down in March, and when the parents had the ability to decide when and where and how they did that. But you're describing the structure, and I listened to the school board meeting that was several weeks ago for about 2.5 hours. So I kind of know where they're coming from, and I understand that. My husband, also retired, is an 8th grade school teacher, retired in science. So we have some understandings from a number of different backgrounds of our own. We also know that we have to be there as grandparents to help these families do it. And there are a lot of families who don't have us to help them. And I'm not sure it's going to work the way we think it's going to work. I think we need to have built into it. And I need to know how that's going to be there. A lot less structure. And my husband has a question.
Yeah, Diane, your prescription that you described sounds like the rules for a Gestapo summer camp. They have to dress properly. They can't no pajamas. They can't eat their cereal while these are suffused with trivialities and control stuff. And I did 30 years in the Central Phoenix teaching science to 8th graders, and I'm appalled by this.
So our question is, how do we inject some of this on this emergency basis that we're really on? But it's also something, we've never cured a virus. We're not going to cure it now. And this virus is with us forever. We let it loose in our society. We're not going to get it back. We have to learn how to adapt to it. It's not going to adapt to us. And
well, I wish I had an answer to how school districts adapt to it in general, because certainly, as you're aware, teachers share the concerns of, as Christy said, 3 feet, 6 feet. What are the protocols? I personally don't want my students mixing with other groups of students in the beginning, because I'd like to keep my cohort as pure as I can. But so we share those concerns, and I think you're right in recognizing we've never been through this before, so we're all adapting. But to answer your question, so 2 things. One, I think Kristen mentioned that there is online learning and then there is distance learning, and the 2 are very different. So for some families, what in our district we're calling SOLS, Scottsdale Online Learning, is a better option than the enhanced distance learning, because it allows that family to have the flexibility to learn on a schedule that works for their family. So it's more self-directed. It's more do it when it works for you. You just have to get the material done. And if that's on Saturday and Sunday and weeknights instead of weekdays, that's okay. So that's one thing I would say. With enhanced distance learning, if you have a teacher that doesn't hear your needs and doesn't reasonably respond to them, and you understand I'm saying we can't accommodate every single difference, then first off, you need to talk to the teacher. But I would never, ever, ever expect a student my age to be online for 6 hours. That's crazy. And we have particularly designed it so that they have a longer lunch than they do normally. They are still going to specials so that they're getting PE or art or music, so that they aren't just focused on academics. And you're right, we plan to end each class maybe 10, 15 minutes earlier than the hour, so that they have time to go to the bathroom and get a drink and do those things. again, that's trying to mirror what goes on in a class, because at my grade level, I don't expect students going out in the middle of class to use the bathroom. If I were a kindergarten or first grade teacher, maybe. But we all need those breaks and those brain breaks. And in my case, my science is largely designed while we're distance learning to get them outside, to observe things that they may be able to focus on animals or on different plants, or perhaps a cooking experiment, things that would allow them not to be online, because my biggest concern is too much online time. And then finally, you know, we have a schedule of when we'll be available for live teaching. But as far as the work being due, Judy, so that if, let's say, your daughter were to write me and say, you know, this is the schedule we're faced with, can we have until each weekend to complete our independent work and our testing? I would, of course, say, absolutely, I get it. Because I know Bill and Jesse well. I know they're both juggling it and they're doing the best they can. So you just need to reach out and have those conversations, because I think most teachers will willingly say, yeah, that's fine, I get it. I get the weekend's a better time for you to work on it. I'll expect it Saturday or Sunday. Let me know if there's a problem. It's not that we're trying to be rigid, but as Christy said, we're trying to give kids a purpose and a schedule and a structure where they thrive. And that's the idea behind having them be dressed and had their breakfast and be sitting in front of the computer, because they need to recognize that it's time to work. It's not playtime at that time. It's not that we're trying to be Gestapo. So anyone else want to weigh in?
I would say, just from like a special ed teacher's perspective, I think basically every teacher will recognize, like, if the kid needs a break, the kid needs a break. Like, if we're in school and I've got a student with ADHD who needs to walk around the school or needs to, you know, run in the gym real quick, like, we let that happen. So that should happen at home too. You know, you might have to run outside and not run around the living room. But I think that from that perspective, I think teachers really understand that this is a really difficult situation. And if the kid needs a break, or if your schedule's not working with what their schedule needs to be, like, there has to be that flexibility.
Thank you. And then I did get a couple questions from Susan in the chat room. And so
I'm sorry, can I say one more thing?
Sure,
Which
go ahead.
was, if you're in the Scottsdale School District, and I don't know if this is true in PV, Bill and Jesse, but Scottsdale is offering locations where kids can go to be supervised, so that if their families don't have that ability, they can go to a school and have that supervision. So there is that option, and that's with the enhanced distance learning, not with online. It's that you would go to like a school's cafeteria and you'd have your little space and there would be folks there to monitor and support you.
Kristen, can I say one more thing too? I just want to say, you know, I would share with someone, to everybody, do the best you can. You know, this is a difficult situation. In-person school, our regular school system, we know that doesn't work for everybody. Homeschooling doesn't work for everybody. Advanced, you know, enhanced distance learning isn't going to work for everybody. You know, I think school districts really worked hard to come up with creative solutions that offer really great learning opportunities. But is it going to work for everybody? No, it's not. And what I tell parents is, and kids, do the best you can. You try, you know, like we're asking kids to stretch and grow a little bit, but we ask that of kids every year, you know, and we need to learn to be flexible and adaptive. And those are skills that kids, in my opinion, are almost more important. Some of those social emotional learning things, you know, growth mindset and flexibility and grit and determination, you know, those are things that we need to be encouraging kids to do. So at the same time, if a kid or a family is getting super stressed by something, goodness gracious, reach out to a teacher, reach out to another professional in the school or the district, reach out to your support system and say, hey, we need help. You know, this isn't going great for us. We're all at the end of our rope. We're stressed. And talk with people. I mean, there is help out there. There is flexibility out there, and hearing from the school districts I'm in and from school districts across the country. So I would really encourage your family and other families out there, like, do the best you can, reach out for help. And you know what? It's not going to be perfect. You know, the school year just isn't. And I think we just need to not lower expectations, but readjust our expectations. Kind of like what Luke said, you know, if we know that a kid can only pay attention and focus for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, then it's unrealistic as a parent or an educator to demand expectations that are developmentally inappropriate. So, you know, we just need to try our best and do our best, and we'll get through it. It's going to be okay. This won't go on forever. You know, this is just a short time that we have, hopefully.
All right. Did any of our other panelists want to speak to that, or we're feeling okay about it? All right, we had Susan, who's actually one of our preschool parents, and she was asking kind of more specifically when it comes to the in-person for education, and this is more geared for you, Christy, like, when do you think is like the safest and the best way to kind of approach that in person from a health perspective? And I know there's no sure answer yet, but where it might be leading now.
Well, the evidence is really hard to pin down. I have heard things that if the prevalence is 15% or less in the community, then it is safer to gather in person. That's actually a hard number to even find since we're not testing everyone in the community. It's hard to know where we are right now to give you an exact answer on that. But I think it's kind of looking to see, are we still peaking, which the latest is showing that we have kind of reached the maximum and are coming down, but will it go back up? It's hard to know, but I think we need to keep looking at data. And if it does seem to be kind of flattening or decreasing, and ideally 15% or less in the community, then it would probably be the safer time to go back. And in terms of the age, it seems to spread less in kids 10 years and younger. So that would bode well for the preschool parent.
All right, thanks, Christy. And then not alone in that. I can see Kristen ready to jump into here. So go ahead, Kristen.
I mean, and this is something that you can try, because obviously this is all experimentation on what really piques your daughter's interest. But I think now is a good time to really think outside the box as far as what her interests may be. And so one of the things that works, maybe the socialization, just chatting with her friends over Zoom doesn't do it, but perhaps playing a game will. You know, there are certain games that have online components like Ticket to Ride, where you can play the game online, or they could even each have their own board game. And maybe, you know, like they don't normally spend their time playing a board game, but that would be just enough distracting that becomes something regular that they do. There are also other ways, you know, part of this is not having the purpose that I think was brought up earlier. And if there's something that you can do that would re-engage her in finding what her purpose and passions are, you know, throwing herself into something, and especially now in the little bit of time we've got before school really ramps back up, to be able to fully, you know, set a goal and you know, accomplish something. And that may be hard. That may take some time to tease out what really piques her interest. But you know, now is a good time to be able to do some of that. And then you can foster the socialization around whatever that passion may be. I don't know if that's not concrete enough, but it's something.
Anyone else want to offer some advice there that might help?
I think it's also hard at the age that you do sort of pull back a little bit, and kind of in that middle school time is when you're trying to learn your independence and who you are. And sometimes there is a little bit of retreat in that. So I think I would try to determine, you mentioned that she was sad a lot, which does seem a little different than that, but some of it is developmentally normal. So maybe being there for her, but not overreacting. But then if you do feel like it's most of the time or more of the time she's sad, then there are ways to get help for that. I think that talking to your pediatrician if you feel like it's gone beyond the developmentally normal thing.
I would just say too, reach out to your school. I mean, there are social workers and counselors in schools and districts all throughout your district, I'm sure. I meet with students one-on-one over Zoom. I'll go and sit in their driveway 6 feet apart with them wearing our masks if we need to. So, I would encourage you to, if she's willing, to connect her with another loving, caring adult outside of you and family, just to be, I'm not suggesting she needs therapy or counseling or anything like that, but just another loving, caring adult in her life outside of her family, someone she can hopefully trust and talk to and develop a relationship with, can be so reassuring and supportive to kids. And again, they don't need to necessarily talk about why she's sad, but play games or talk or share funny YouTube videos, whatever it is. That can be really supportive for kids. So reach out to your school.
Yeah, thank you. Annie, I really appreciate you being so open and sharing some of the real hardships that I think a lot of parents and all of us actually are facing. I think a lot of us are all at that point where some of us who are a little more not as outgoing, we're a little more introverted. It's been hard to kind of re-engage in different ways, and technology isn't great, and Zoom fatigue and virtual fatigue is a real thing. So I don't think, we're all here for you and we love you. And so I really appreciate you sharing that with us. Do you have any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, William.
First, I want to say, I really appreciate the extent to which the school districts have tried to adapt from the spring until now. We're super impressed. I thought the description of Diana with the crisis learning, the spring was just a totally different environment. And it's pretty clear seeing our school district schedule now that a lot of work went into the summer. We did an hour conference call with parents and teachers a week or two ago, and I think it's laid out really well. We're two working parents with no family support in the area at all. It's just the two of us with a 6-year-old about to turn 7. So there's plenty of challenges ahead. But the school district provided options for that. They provided an online, as the asynchronous model that we can adapt and go at our own pace, or the model that's synchronous, where he'll essentially spend about 3 hours in the morning and then individualized learning in small groups in the afternoon. And so there's plenty of options there, and you can opt in and out depending on your circumstances. We're going to start going with the synchronous model with the 3 hours live, see if that works. It may not work with us working at home and not being able to be interrupted and oversee him. And so we might have to go to the straight online version, asynchronous, which won't be ideal, but it will give us the flexibility. And given the environment, there's not, there's only so much that can be done with the unknowns, the challenges of working parents. So, I think this is the state we're in, and the adaptability and the flexibility really is the key. And we have to make it work. We have no backup plan. We have no safety net. It's Jesse and I and our son, and everyone else is on the East Coast. So we're just super happy that the school district's flexible and gave us options. And so I just want to throw that out there that, I really think that there's a lot of work that went on, and I appreciate that. And the more that parents and teachers see that flexibility, the better we are.
Thank you, Will. Yeah, that's great. And just so that I'm going to be offering it too, but as we get back to school, as the children's minister, I'm also going to be opening up time. So if you as parents need 30 minutes for me to play Pictionary with your child, let me know. I'm there. I can distract them for 30 minutes as needed. So always feel free to reach out to us. We're also looking at ways when we can maybe allow like a drop-off time at church for a little bit, just for an hour, so parents can run errands when that's safe to do so. So we're really trying to look at ways to partner with parents and give them respite in ways that we can and connect with the kids as much as possible. It's a challenge. You all know. Judy, did you have another question, or I saw your hand?
Just an idea to throw out there. There are several people on this panel who are not only experts, but who have worked in the areas with children for some time, including your very own. And it seems like there's a really good team here. I would encourage all parents to be sure they continue to follow up with well child checkups as they would have normally, because it's important in order to keep up immunizations. It's important to keep up some of the other questions in the developmental, as well as the psychological or emotional things that are going on with children as they get older. And it also helps parents to know that there's somebody else out there to help them along. And then we've got school social workers, we've got the teachers, we've got the people in our community and the church. We've got people all around us in this particular group that are not just experts, but are there to help us with all of the special needs that are going on because of this crisis, as you call it. And we can make it far less of a crisis, not only for the children, but for us as well. Just a statement. Thanks.
Thank you, Judy. Yeah, did we have any other questions before we go? We're going to have Pastor Sharon, I'm so grateful, offered to close us in prayer today if we don't have any other questions. All right. Well, Pastor Sharon, you can go ahead and close us in prayer.
Okay. Dear loving and gracious God, we thank you that there are so many people who care for the children. We pray for those parents who do not feel adequate or who aren't really able to give all the attention, that somehow they can reach out to others to help them fulfill those empty spaces. We pray that all of us will work together in a positive way, that we don't judge, we just try to keep encouraging, because it's a very difficult, very different kind of time. And as we attempt to do our best, what we most probably all need is encouragement. You're doing good, you could try these things, because we don't want people to get discouraged. We don't want people to get any more depressed than they might already be. And we want them to feel that love of God. That's the number one thing to learn before they learn any lessons, that these children are still vitally important to their family, their school, and their community. And so we ask you, dear God, to bless all the children, all the parents and grandparents or neighbors who will be involved in working to help them be able to have a good experience. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Well, thank you all so much. I appreciate you all being here. We are going to have this recording up. It's either going to be linked directly on the kids page on our website, or we're going to link it through YouTube. So we'll have it there if you need to look back at anything. If anyone has any other questions, if they want me to get out to a specific person on the panel for follow-up or just general help in searching out a resource, please don't hesitate to contact us at church. We're happy to help get that search started and partner with you on it. So thank you so much for joining us today.